I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands. This memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs. This is an unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights. And we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI Director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations on your nomination. I'm so glad that you've been nominated, as we discussed when we had the chance to meet.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to work with you as a State Attorney General for a number of years, and I'm delighted to see you here today before the committee. I look forward to your confirmation. You will be confirmed. I, too, have taken note of the number of times you have been asked about weaponization of the Department of Justice as if it was a theoretical possibility that might happen in the future. One of my colleagues on the other side said, weaponization may well occur under your tenure. We all know that weaponization has occurred like we've never seen before in American history under this administration. And I want to get even more specific. In the last 4 years, this administration has carried out an unprecedented attack and campaign against people of faith. If you look at the numbers, we've never seen anything like it before in American history. It has been one of the most disgraceful chapters in the history of the Justice Department and in the history of the FBI. And I hope that you will reverse this and do right by every American citizen, including especially people of faith. Let me give you some specifics. After the Dobbs case was decided by the Supreme Court, over 100 pregnancy care centers and over 300 churches in this country were attacked, vandalized, firebombed. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many prosecutions Merrick Garland's Justice Department brought in those cases? I
do not, Senator.
It's a stunning number. It's 2. Hundreds of churches, hundreds of pregnancy care centers. And I might just add, these pregnancy care centers, the attacks on them, which were violent, which were gruesome, were egged on and encouraged by rhetoric from members of Congress, including members of this body, who have said that pregnancy care centers aren't real medicine, that they're not real doctors. They have legitimized these attacks. And the same thing was true of churches. And this Justice Department couldn't lift a finger to defend these Americans. But at the same time, they used legislation, a law known as the FACE Act, to prosecute at least 53 different pro-life demonstrators, including people like Mark Houck from Pennsylvania, whom this Justice Department sent a SWAT team to his door in the early morning hours. He has, I think, 7 children. In the early morning hours, an FBI SWAT team shows up at his door to take him into custody and prosecute him. By the way, he was acquitted. This kind of outrageous, disparate treatment has to end. So here's my question to you. Will you protect churches and pregnancy care centers when they are targeted for violence, when they are targeted for intimidation, when their members or parishioners are threatened with violence or other acts of illegal behavior?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the disparate treatment of Americans on the basis of religious faith?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the deliberate persecution of pro-life Americans for nothing more than their pro-life beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
Will you ensure that nothing like the Mark Houck case happens again, that Americans do not have SWAT teams arriving on their front doors with armed weapons to terrorize their children and their spouses, only in the end, of course, to have the case lost because there was nothing to it? Will you put an end to that kind of deliberate intimidation of the good American citizens on the basis of their religious beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
I'm glad to hear you say that because we need it. We need it. Ms. Bondi, we need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and we need it quickly. And I'm glad you're committed to it. Now, I also have heard you've been asked about your comment that you thought that in some cases we need to investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. You know, I have to say I'm glad to hear you stand by that. We need to do that. You need to do that. And I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands. This memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs. This is an unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights. And we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI Director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved. Multiple individuals were involved. Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and performance, execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation, like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse. One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I'm confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you work with this committee and our relevant subcommittees? I'm going to chair a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee. We're going to do our own investigation into what happened here at the FBI and the DOJ. Will you work with us as you discover the nature of these abuses, and as you put a stop to them, will you work with us to make sure the American people get all the facts and this never happens again?
And Senator, yes, I look forward to working with you and the Democrats. I would think this is something that we can all agree on both sides, that this should not be happening in the United States of America, and work together on it.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you one other question here in my just few seconds that are remaining. This memo targeting Catholic parishes repeatedly refers to as an expert source a group called the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has a long history as an anti-religious group that has repeatedly gone after conservative and religious organizations, called them hate groups, called them sometimes terrorist groups. They're cited in this memo. They once infamously, the SPLC called the Family Research Council a terrorist hate group, and an armed gunman came into their lobby and opened fire. Will you put a stop to the use of the SPLC as an official source for any Department of Justice memorandum or finding?
That will be one of the first things we will look at as well, Senator, and report back to you and the committee.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi.
In the final moments of this hearing, the room seemed to tighten around a single unmistakable theme: accountability. It began with Senator Josh Hawley leaning forward, his voice sharpened by years of frustration and unleashing a pointed accusation that echoed through the chamber. We've never seen anything like it before in American history. With those words, he set the tone for what followed: a searing confrontation between elected oversight and the extraordinary power of the nation's top law enforcement institutions. As Hawley spoke, his message was not casual, not rhetorical, not speculative. He was drawing a line. He reminded the nominees and the country that something deeper was at stake than partisan disagreement. He walked through years of actions taken by the Department of Justice, actions he described as selective, punitive, and aimed squarely at people of faith. He recounted the attacks on churches and community centers, the lack of prosecutions that followed, the use of federal law against citizens whose only force was their belief. And then he offered the contrast: a family awakened before sunrise by a tactical team, children startled, a father taken into custody on charges later dismissed by a jury. It was this imbalance, this disparate treatment, as he called it, that formed the backbone of his indictment. And across from him sat Pam Bondi, the nominee who would soon hold the authority to reshape the very department now under scrutiny. She listened as the senator pressed, asked, demanded commitments. And one by one, she answered, "Yes, Senator." The same phrase repeated with steady tone. A pledge on the record in the full light of the hearing to protect places of worship, to end selective enforcement, to prevent raids that never should have occurred, and to uphold consistent standards of justice for all Americans. It was a moment heavy with symbolism. Two people, one asking whether the justice system can be trusted, the other vowing that she intends to restore that trust. In the tension between those sentences, you could feel the weight of decades of debate about institutions that have grown vast, powerful, and often untouchable. You could feel the unease of a nation, wondering whether the rules still apply evenly, whether authority can still be restrained, whether the government still belongs to the people it serves. But the moment didn't end there. Senator Hawley lifted a document, a memo from an FBI field office crafted in January 2023, and with it came a new burst of disbelief. He described plans to monitor religious communities, to place government assets inside places meant to be sanctuaries. He described how senior officials had dismissed concerns, minimized the scope, insisted that everything was under control. Yet, evidence later revealed the opposite. Multiple offices were involved, more personnel were aware, and the public was left in the dark until a whistleblower stepped forward. This was the point where the purpose of oversight came sharply into focus. "Will you investigate the investigators?" he asked. Not as political theater, but as a question rooted in the idea that no institution should ever become more powerful than the democracy that created it. And again, Bondi's answer was simple, direct, unqualified. "Yes, Senator." In that exchange, the hearing revealed something that goes far beyond party lines or policy disputes. It revealed the thin, fragile thread that holds together the American system. The belief that power can be questioned, that authority must justify itself, that citizens are not subjects but the sovereign owners of their government. When that thread begins to fray, hearings like this become more than routine political ritual. They become a test of the nation's constitutional heartbeat. And then came the broader warning, the acknowledgement that the same flawed sources, the same problematic reports, the same external organizations had been allowed to influence official government documents, even as their credibility was publicly questioned for years. When Senator Hawley asked whether such sources would continue to shape federal policy, Bondi promised to review it immediately. Another commitment, another attempt to rebuild public trust. In these final moments of the hearing, what remained was a sense of clarity. Not all agreement, not all harmony, but clarity. The system is strained. Confidence has been shaken. The American people have watched scandal, contradiction, and secrecy erode the reputation of once respected institutions. And now, on this day in this room, a nominee pledged to confront those failures openly, to examine the practices that brought so much controversy, and to restore something essential: fairness. This hearing was more than an exchange of questions and answers. It was a reminder that democracy is not maintained by silence or passive acceptance. It is maintained by citizens who demand answers, by leaders willing to confront uncomfortable truths, and by public servants who pledge to correct the course when the system drifts away from its purpose. What we witnessed here was a call, not simply to one nominee, but to the entire country, to defend a justice system that treats every person with dignity, every belief with respect, and every community with equal protection under the law. A justice system that serves the people rather than intimidates them. A justice system that earns trust through transparency, integrity, and restraint. And so, as this hearing closes, one message rises above the noise. The future of American justice depends on courage. The courage to question, the courage to reform, and the courage to demand accountability from those who wield extraordinary power. If America is to remain a nation where freedom is not just a word, but a lived reality, then this conversation must continue. The questions must not fade. The commitments must be honored. And the truth must always be pursued, no matter how uncomfortable. This is Liberty Report USA, dedicated to shining a light where others look away. If you stand for accountability, transparency, and the protection of constitutional rights, subscribe to Liberty Report USA.